If you create motion graphics in Fusion or you're just starting out, these 11 essential Fusion tips can save you hours of frustration and help take your skill to the next level. Now, let's say you built a motion graphic at 1080p and later realized you actually wanted it in 4K for cleaner, sharper edges. The good news is you don't need to rebuild everything from scratch, and you don't even need to change your timeline resolution. The very first node in your node tree controls the resolution of your design. By default, it follows the timeline resolution, but you can override that. Select the first background node, go to the Image tab in the inspector, and you will see the resolution your design is currently using. Uncheck Auto Resolution and enter the resolution you want. If your design is built with shapes and vectors, everything should stay in place without breaking alignment. PNG images, however, might need a little adjustment. You will also notice the design suddenly looks smaller. This is because your graphic is now living inside a much larger canvas. Just scale it up a little if needed and save it as a macro. Whenever you are saving a Fusion effect, always make sure it has a transparent background. Now, while you are building your motion graphic, it's completely fine to give your canvas any color you want. It makes it much easier to see how your design looks. But once you are finished, go back to the first background node and set alpha to 0. That gives your macro a transparent background. However, there is one thing to watch out for. If you use any color other than black, simply setting alpha to 0 won't give you true transparency. As you can see, the screen still has a color tint, and that tint will show up in your macro as well. That's because the alpha channel is 0, but the RGB values are still there. So before saving your effect, always make sure all 4 channels are set to 0. This next tip is probably the one you will use more than any other. Let's say you create an animation that starts at frame 0 and ends at frame 10. Later, you decide it will look better if it ended at frame 20, so the motion has a little more room to breathe. Instead of deleting keyframes and doing everything again, open the spline editor, make sure Show Only Selected tool is checked, click Zoom to fit, and give yourself some room by expanding the editor. Now you can clearly see the second keyframe sitting at frame 10. Select it and drag it to the new frame. As you drag, you will see a wide vertical line moving in the timeline. You can do exactly the same thing inside the keyframes editor. You can even move an entire block of keyframes without selecting each one individually. Next, there is one Fusion node that you should be using almost in every motion graphic you build. Imagine you have created a design with multiple elements, PNGs, polygons, ellipses, text, and a bunch of other pieces. Right now, if you want to move the entire design, you would have to move every element one by one and then line everything up again. Not fun. Instead, add a transform node right before media out. Now you have one global control for the entire design. You can move it, resize it, and animate everything together using a single node. You only need 2 or 3 keyframes to create an endless animation loop. Let's build this classic 3-dot bouncing animation. At frame 0, add a keyframe to center, move forward 5 frames, and add another keyframe. Then move about 15 frames forward and raise the dot slightly. If we play it back right now, it's just simple movement. Open the keyframes editor and select the keyframes. First, I'm going to smooth the motion. Then, with the keyframe still selected, choose Set Ping Pong. Now this gives us an endless animation loop. Now duplicate this dot setup 2 more times and position the dots using the merge nodes. At this point, all 3 dots are moving exactly the same way. Select the second dot, open the keyframes editor, and offset its animation by 3 frames. Then select the third dot and offset its animation by 6 frames. Now each dot starts at slightly different time, creating a smooth looping bounce animation. This next Fusion trick can save you hours of repetitive work. Let's say you are creating a bar chart infographic. You have already styled and animated the first bar, but you need 5 bars in total. Instead of building the remaining bars manually, add a duplicate node after the last node that makes up the bar, set the number of copies you want, and offset them using center. Now, because they are clones, they all look exactly the same, which is not what we want. Offset the time by a few frames, let's say -3. Now each bar animates slightly differently and chart feels much more dynamic. Now in some situations, copy-pasting nodes can actually create more work for you later. Let's say you are building a bullet point list. You have styled and animated the first item, and now you need several more. The obvious thing to do is copy and paste the text plus node multiple times. But there is a better option. Instead of paste, choose paste instance. This creates a clone that is linked to the original node. Create as many instances as you need and position them using their merge nodes. Now select one of the instances. In the inspector, you will notice a lot of controls have a green border. That simply means those parameters are linked to the parent node and other instances. Of course, sometimes you want a parameter to be unique. The text field is a perfect example. Just right-click it and choose the instance. Now you can change the text independently. Let's do the same for the other instances. So why is this better than regular copy-paste? Imagine you have a long bullet point list and later you decide to change the font size or color. With instances, you only have to change it once. Every linked node updates automatically. This next one feels like a hidden superpower inside DaVinci Resolve. Let's say you have created a number counter using one text plus node and a percentage sign using another. You animate the opacity of the first text node to create a soft breathing effect. Now, instead of recreating that animation on the second text node, select it, right-click opacity, choose connect to, then pick the first text node's opacity control. And boom, the same animation is now driving both controls. Now, here is one of the most hidden productivity features in Fusion. Naming important nodes is a professional habit, but don't do it the slow way. Select all the nodes you want to rename, press F2, type the new name, and hit enter. The next node immediately appears ready to be renamed. Don't delete a node you have already spent time setting up. Let's say you have added some glow to a text effect. Now you are not sure if you want to keep it. And if you delete it and later change your mind, you will have to recreate everything. That's not a big deal for a simple effect. But what if you have spent several minutes tweaking a more complex node? Instead of deleting it, just disable it. Fusion won't process a disabled node, so it has virtually no impact on the playback performance. And if you decide you want it back, simply turn it on again. Let's talk about slow playback, because trying to build motion graphics with laggy previews is incredibly frustrating. If you can't see your animation playing smoothly, it's very hard to judge timing and motion. So here's what you should do. Go to playback, then render cache. You will see three options. If yours is set to none, may God have mercy on your system, because every heavy effect is being processed directly by your GPU. Instead, switch it to Smart or User. Smart lets DaVinci Resolve decide what should be cached and what should remain live. It's pretty good on the edit page, but in my experience, it's not always reliable for Fusion work. For Fusion, I recommend this. Find the heaviest node in your node tree. Usually that's the final main merge or media out where everything comes together. Right-click it and choose Cache to Disk. Then select Pre-render, because we want the cache generated immediately. Think of it like a temporary download. Once the cache is complete, your animation should play back smoothly. One final thing to remember. If you make changes after the cache is finished, even something very small, the cache becomes invalid and Fusion will need to render it again. But if you only want to render a specific section of your comp, maybe to take a closer look at a particular animation, you don't have to cache the entire thing. Just adjust these two orange markers to set a render range around the section you want to preview, then render it the same way as before. This time, Fusion will only render the part that falls within that render range, which can save a lot of time while you are testing and fine-tuning your animation. I hope this helps. Give the video a like and subscribe.